Hey there, good morning. I'm Connie Fuchsa with Foot Title Group, where we protect your home ownership and make sure that your closing for your new home is smooth and simple and a fun process for you. So welcome to Coffee with Connie. Thanks so much for taking the time to tune in. If you're tuning in live, check in and say, hey, let me know that you're on. It helps me understand who we're talking to so I can make sure that we're putting out information that's helpful to you. If you're watching on the replay, feel free to reach out and let us know that you're watching as well, because it also helps me understand timing on what works for who. So thanks so much for tuning in. And I want to take a few minutes and remind everybody that one of the things that helps me so much is when you ask questions. So information today came from a family member that is looking to buy a house and had questions. And so when you guys reach out and ask questions, it helps me gear things towards what you don't understand or what you might need to know. So, hey there, Karen. Thanks for being on this morning. Good morning, Tony. Hey, Craig. How are you? Hey, Kelly. How you doing this morning? Thank you guys for tuning in. So the question that I had, and we've been talking a lot about this recently, is we've been talking about closing costs. What determines the closing costs? Where do they come from? What do all these numbers look like? How do they get turned into what you have to pay at closing, and where does that go? And so we've talked about a little bit about that previously in the past couple of weeks, but let me recap that for a second. And then what I wanted to do is talk to you about not only where they come from and what happens, but how those come together before closing. Because this question that I got was not necessarily what happens at closing, but how do I know what my closing costs are going to be? So as I'm looking at homes, I can negotiate with a seller about who's paying what, because then I know how much it is. So let's talk about what are closing costs real quick. And then let's talk about how they turn into what you owe at closing. And then let's talk about who and how those are created. So when you get ready to go to closing, or when you're making an offer on a home, you can determine how to calculate what you want to pay, what you want to negotiate, and so you can make sure that everything is in order for you. So let's start at the beginning. What you're going to do when you are first looking at homes is I want you to find a lender that is going to actually do the loan for you. And the reason that we want to do that first is because most realtors and most sellers will not entertain a contract. Most realtors might not work with you until they know what you're qualified for. And most sellers won't accept a contract until they know that you're qualified to be able to pay that amount of money for closing. So you want to work with a lender that is either recommended to you, or you've done some research to make sure that it's somebody that you feel comfortable working with, so that they can direct you on how much you can afford, what you can do about closing costs, and what type of house you want to be looking at. So that's the first step. And then working with a realtor obviously is very important. And the realtor is going to help you come up with some numbers as well, as you're from what your lender's given you, as you're looking at homes, knowing what you want to buy and what you want to negotiate and not negotiate based on what's going on in the market in the area that you're looking for. So again, having a good realtor on your team to be able to do that is imperative as well. So as you're looking at some of those closing costs, hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Pam, good morning to you. Hey Jeff, how are you? Thank you guys for taking your time. Hey Joe, all the way from Brazil. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. Okay, so you've found a lender you want to work with, you found a realtor you want to work with, and when you go to closing, the money that you're told to bring to your closing comes together along with all the other funds, the loan funds. Maybe the seller might owe a little bit of money, maybe they don't, maybe you just need to bring some money to the table, and whoever does your closing puts together all of those funds and then pays out all of the bills for your closing. Now, when you start talking about negotiating what's going on in your contract, this is the question that came to me most recently. So what happens? How do I know what closing costs I want to pay, what closing costs the seller should pay? What are all of those closing costs, and where do they all come from? And so what I recommended in this particular scenario, and in most cases, is that when you start working with that mortgage lender at the very beginning, they're going to tell you, based on all of your qualifications, what you can afford to buy, but also within what you can afford to buy, what you can afford to pay at the closing. And so they're going to be your best source of information on what some of those costs should be. Now, what your lender will do, and a lender who is qualified in the particular community that you're looking for and has a good experience with being able to put together those numbers, is that lender is going to put together some estimated costs that should be fairly close, with some help from the realtor you're working with and the closing company that you're working with. They will grab from those resources and ask for some information so they can put together a really good estimate for you. And so between your lender and your realtor, they can come up with all of the different pieces that are going to go into that, and they can tell you what you should be able to afford, so you'll have some negotiating power. So not only how much house you can afford, but what closing costs you should be able to buy or be able to pay and not pay in order to buy that house. And the reason that's important, and the lender can help you make some of those determinations, is because sometimes it depends on the type of loan that you're doing. So if you're doing a VA loan, which in this case, this was happening, one of the purchasers is a veteran, and so they were able to get a VA loan, which gives them a little bit of different negotiating power because they are able to go in without any cash down and some closing costs paid in a lot of scenarios. So it's a good negotiating spot for them because they can borrow more money for more house with less closing if the seller's willing to pay some closing costs for them. So that gives them a little more negotiating power than maybe other types of loans. One of the benefits to those men and women that protect our country. So thank God for them and that they're able to do that. So the lender would know that for you. And then if there's other types of loans that you're doing, whether it's a first-time home buyer kind of loan so that some more closing costs can be paid on your behalf, maybe it is a loan where it's in a rural housing community that there's special government programs, your lender is going to know some of those kinds of things and understand what some of those costs are going to be, and they're the only ones that are going to be able to help with that. Now, as I said, they're going to pull some from some different resources, both who's doing your closing and your realtor, to make sure that they've got all of the pieces on the things that they don't deal with directly, but ultimately they can pull all of that together with the help from those resources and be able to figure those numbers out to give you the best negotiating power. Now, with that said, let me just put a couple of plugs in there, because when you deal with a company that does your closing, that has resources that your realtor can pull from, it's much more beneficial because it helps them give you the best information to negotiate that contract. So when you're dealing with a company that has some resources, for example, Foot Title Group, on our website, we have a calculator that has the ability for that lender to go in and calculate all of those closing costs that they know what they are, but also the ones they don't know, to plug in some pieces so that they can get the best information for you. And they can actually save that estimate. So if you're looking at different houses, they can go back in and plug in different numbers. You also can do that, and so can your realtor, on our website, www.foottitlegroup.com. There's a title calculator on there, and you have to sign up for it, but it doesn't commit you to anything except giving you the ability to save the information. So when you go in and add information about the houses you're looking at, you can calculate different costs. The other thing is, a lot of title companies have different fees for different parts of the process. And a shameless plug I want to put in there is we charge one fee. People are so confused because it's very different in the industry, but it makes it easier for the lender to be able to come up with exactly what those costs are, because we charge one fee. It covers notary fees and settlement fees and binder fees, commitment fees, all of those different things that you might see on a closing statement, that with Foot Title Group, it's one cost. So shameless plug, but I wanted to put it out there because a lot of people just don't even understand it, and we wanted to make it as simple as possible for everybody. Hey, John, how are you this morning? Carl, how are you? Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Jeff, good morning. How are you this morning? Thank you for taking the time this morning to check in and to be on with us. And hopefully I helped you a little bit understand about closing costs. But what I wanted to tell you, most important, to answer a question that I got yesterday, was when you're looking to start looking at homes and you want to negotiate, rely on that lender, rely on that realtor, rely on who you're picking to do your closing, because they can give you all of those pieces, and the lender will be able to compile all of that and come up with a plan of attack for you so you can make the best offer for you and for your family on that dream home that you're looking for. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic day. I really appreciate your time. If you found what we talked about valuable, please hit the share button and share it with those people that you know. We have lots of resources on our website, not just the things I talked about, but if you go on either the buyers, the seller, or the realtor lender tab, go to resources. There's all kinds of information on a lot of these things we talk about, and our blog post gives you a lot of information as well. So hopefully we can give you some resources that'll help you make better decisions and maybe spur some questions that we can help with. So if you have any questions, reach out to any of our team members in Maryland or Virginia. They are all here to help you out. They can answer questions in both states. And the information we talked about this morning is not state specific. That is true no matter where you are looking to buy a house across the country. So hopefully I helped you. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic day. I love talking to you guys. Please share questions with me. It gives me information on what people may be not understanding about things that we're talking about, and maybe ways we can help you. So hope you guys have a fantastic day. I look forward to talking to you again real soon. Thanks for tuning in to Coffee with Connie. I'm Connie Fuchs with Foot Title Group, where we protect your home ownership. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye-bye.